Hello, everybody, and welcome to Integrated Rhythm. Two swing dancing besties, that's Chisomo Selamani and myself, Bobby White, tackle things like race and other really fun topics in the swing dance scene. Today is a Chisomo and Bobby episode. It's a lot of fun. And by fun, I mean hopefully not too depressing. Thank you to all our Patreon patrons. You make this possible. And I hope you enjoy.
Integrated rhythm with Gisomo and Bobby.
As the late and great Michelle Stokes said, in order to be successful in Lindy Hop, you have to be cute in the face and cute in the waist.
Mmm.
As a woman,
Mmm.
yeah. So,
Mmm.
yeah, there's a lot there about being cute in the face and being cute in the waist. And if you don't know what being cute in the waist is, we're talking about being thin, looking a particular way in terms of body. And then in our conversation with Michelle, we talked about the complexities that have to do with being Black. And so, even if you are cute in the face and cute in the waist, being a Black woman also presents a layer of invisibility and hypervisibility. But yeah, Bobby, you said that you've been thinking about like bodies on the dance floor and body autonomy and teaching to different bodies as well. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, I can talk about this for days.
Yeah, so I'm about to cough.
Yeah. Mm.
Sorry, getting over a cold type thing. Yeah, so I've been as a teacher, and especially as so for those of you who don't know, I am a 6'2" person, which is taller than the average person, taller than the average primary follow, especially. And if I teach Balboa or a dance that has a chest to chest connection, there are a lot of you know we we spend a lot of time. I have a very specific body that I'm working with and trying to understand. And so then as soon as I walk into a classroom as a teacher, and then there's all these different bodies around, very few of them are my body,
Mhm.
then it's a whole new game of how can I help them accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? Is what I'm trying to accomplish specifically easy because of my body type? Um, there's all these questions that come into play, and as we want people to be comfortable and to be successful and happy, and we want to ask them to do things that they feel is successful and fun to do. And so yeah, I very often that person will raise a hand in the class and be like, "So how can I do this thing?" Not having your situation. Um, and then oftentimes I'm like, let's find out together. Let's see how that can
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Oh man. I love that question though and that curiosity of like, all right, let's work this out together. And I think that is something that makes you such a great instructor, especially for people with a variety of different body types. And then you also have the privilege of working with a bunch of different height shaped follows,
Mm,
right? And so I'm it's me, one of those people, I'm like 5'2", and so something else I've noticed that I actually super appreciate about you is that um uh, so to say this thing, I'm gonna tell a story. So I haven't said the thing yet. So if you're like, did she say it and I missed it? No, you didn't. I was in a class a couple weeks ago with Bianca and Nels, and they were talking about like different challenges you might come across as you're working together, and if you're in like autopilot dancing lead follow. And I'm like, one of my things is I'm like, can I take the size steps that this person is asking me to do? I'm like, I'm gonna, I'm so short. I've got short little legs. My short little legs. And so something I appreciate is that, Bobby, you don't make me try to have step sizes that are ridiculous. And so,
Oh, I'm glad. It's been a struggle. Like my being a tall person, sometimes you take steps that aren't even good for yourself. Like those legs just like stretch out there, and you're like, no, like you're seeing it, and because you can see the future, and you're like, no, and that leg is like way out there, and you're like, well, this is helping neither of us.
this is helping not at all. That is so funny. But yeah, I that's something as a short person that you realize like early on. You're like, oh, okay, especially as a short follow, you're like, oh, okay, we are discovering how our bodies move, and I have found the limit. And so yeah, I think there's so much room for discussion in terms of teaching the different bodies. Um, and then let's just take a step on the side of the dance floor where everybody who engages in a social dance goes. Because maybe not everybody is a teacher, maybe not everybody goes to classes, but if you're doing social dancing, everybody's at a dance. Um, and going back to Michelle's thought, like there are things that we don't even realize are at play as we think about what is we think about. Sorry, my voice cracked. This weather, y'all, it is April and it is not April anymore. Man, sorry. It is May 1st and I'm mourning the fact that it is no longer April. But in northeastern Ohio, the weather has been all over the place, so my sinuses are struggling. Um, but going back to what I was saying was that there are a lot of things that impact how we choose somebody we're dancing with that we don't think about, and often body size is a thing. Um, and so what we'll find is that like getting back into the classroom, being thinking about both the dance floor and the classroom, there are people who will come to classes and they'll go to dances, but then at the end of the day, they have far less experience because people aren't asking them to dance and the class material may not be catered to them.
Mm,
And
mm.
so then they might start at the same time as somebody else who is like straight size, thin, um, and then not progress as quickly because they're not getting social dance practice and they're also not having content tailored to them in a way that they can that makes sense for the way that their bodies move.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something I personally experienced this process. Um, I I got into swing dancing socially, and so um, I learned Lindy Hop socially and with friends, and so I was able to like start to advance through that process a little bit more quickly. But as I got into Balboa, I found that access to improvement was a lot harder, um, because I think that the on ramp, one of the things I love about Balboa is that the on ramp to Balboa might appear from a distance and might appear harder, but I feel like you can get into some like really nice, groovy, great dances ultimately more quickly than Lindy Hop, because I feel like with Lindy Hop, oftentimes people get into it and they're like, this is fun. And so then they'll engage in behaviors that may not be the most mechanically sound for a lot longer because you don't have that immediate feedback of like, I'm chest to you, and the way I move actually impacts how you're moving. So I think that that translates into people thinking that Lindy Hop is more joyful than Balboa is, because I've heard people say that they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I have so much fun in Lindy Hop, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that in Bow." And it's I'm like they're both swing dances. You can have so much joy in both, but I think that that on ramp can be a little bit challenging. And then when you add difference into the equation, like a different body type or difference in learning as compared to how the teachers are instructing. If your body is different from the teachers that are instructing, then that might exacerbate like your that process, that difficulty as you were learning and growing. And so, as I mentioned, I did experience some of those things. My friends were like, in my opinion, so much better at Balboa than I was, um, and they would get asked for dances, and I'd be like standing there, like, okay, well, okay. We even had a friend locally who would like make sure that he danced with the other primary follows quite a bit and did not dance with me. And there were honestly part of it was because there were some mechanical issues, but there were some mechanical issues because I would go to classes and I there was a disconnect. And so it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until I went through study with like doing private lessons and started to realize like, oh hey, I have been ignoring the fact that I have other dance styles in my body, and those are running into my learning process with Balboa, and they can complement each other. But I've been ignoring like the learning that I had from my African dance training. And so there were some things that I was doing that made me mechanically a little bit off, but like I hadn't that hadn't happened in any class, you know. So now, to Bobby's point, like as an instructor, I try to ask questions because I don't know. Like, I don't know your body's history. I don't know what your body knows. I don't know how your body perceives these mechanical movements. And so there has to be a joint exploration moment. Right? That's Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going a lot during that, but I had to turn my mic off because of sirens and stuff going by.
Oh.
There's a lovely little horn to add to the power. But yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I 100% can see all of that happening. And, on the one hand, as, like you said, like we started off talking about this kind of first from the instructor point of view, which is, a small minority of our listeners out there, probably in the sense that, yeah, you want to look around your classroom and try to, so much of what we learn as instructors is watching your students do dancing and then trying to see what's sticking out in your brain as like something isn't, like something isn't what it could be in terms of like the movement or the flow, or like you're like, and then trying to find that and prescribe that for the student, and then maybe you go up to them and you say, oh, maybe try it this way or try this way or try that way. And it basically just means that, you've lived in your own body for a very long time. And so you can probably answer questions regarding your own body pretty easily. I mean, I say pretty easily. Instructing's hard. It's just hard. Maybe not easily. It can take a while to figure out your own body, let alone someone else's body. Uh, but it is just like a long process that you can get started on very soon, and it's really important to do that process. And now taking that and expanding it to our whole social dancing world, is uh, the points that you made about Balboa. I hadn't thought of them in specifically that way before. I think I am in a minority in the sense that I think I got into Balboa and didn't have a whole lot of folks talking about Balboa when I got into it. And so I didn't have biases about Balboa as part of my learning journey in the beginning, in those crucial beginning moments. But I've definitely heard my share of comments or thoughts about Balboa since then, and so I totally see how those opinions are out there and how that can affect one's journey in Balboa. And that realm of social dancing, like I'm not immune from those biases, like I will subconsciously, if left to my subconscious as I walk around a dance floor, the person that is I see having good dances with other folks, I'll go and ask that person to go have a dance or that kind of thing. And those are all totally based on those like spiraling, continuate, this
Yeah.
the downward spiral, the spiral of perception of dance ability.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, like, so something I try to do as an instructor of a place, I definitely try to do this. I think it's a great thing for social dancers to do as well, is to go and cover the room and make sure to ask a good sampling of the dance floor to dance, regardless of whether you've known them before or how their dancing appears to be. Um, and then what? Some incredible, wonderful, beautiful things happen. You'll dance. There's a person here whose body type and age is not the first person to be asked on the dance floor, and they
Mhm.
kill. They are so fun to dance with. They are just killer, and it's just such a. I love dancing with this person, and it's one of those weird
Yeah.
things. It's like, man, if I hadn't stepped outside of that subconscious comfort zone to ask this person to dance, I might
Yeah.
not have discovered how amazing this person is to dance with, and all the great times that we've had since then.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a couple things that come to mind, and my executive functioning right now is a little of a bit of a hot mess. So please forgive me if I can't keep track of everything. But um, one of the things, oh no, did it go away? One of the things is like if you notice that you're having the same dance over and over again, one of the things to ask yourself is like, are you dancing with the same people or the people who look the same over and over again? Um, and because
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, right. And so, because there's something, I've heard different people who will be like, oh man, I just feel like it's like we're, I'm a different song, but same dance. And, um, people with different backgrounds, like this is the great thing about diversity, is like people with different backgrounds, different ways of moving, have different ways of interpreting music, and so that you can go on some really interesting musical adventures, some really interesting dance partnership experiences when you open up your mind a little bit, and you specifically, as you mentioned, Bobby, like pursue opportunities to dance with different people. And I think also not like letting go of expectations and letting go of like what we perceive to be right all the time can also help
Yes,
us with this.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like the times when I was least likely to ask other folks to dance whom I hadn't like danced with a lot before were the times when I didn't know how to have a good time with myself first and foremost. That, like, as a
Mm,
dancer, having a good time with
mm,
just holding a hand with somebody and being able, like, so much of my dancing self-confidence was dependent on, oh, but I do this really cool move, or I need this like really
mm,
strong feeling, I need this like really great partner in order to like truly experience the dance on the level that I need that. um, and the more and more that I like, oh no, this is a social dance first. This is a club dance first and foremost. All of these are. Uh,
yeah.
when I started like just having a good time with myself, moving around, I didn't need fancy moves all the time. I didn't need, um, and this so many some of you dancers out there. Uh, so something that is commonly seen by instructors and folks doing level tests, for instance, is the person who thinks, "Oh, well, I dance really well with these really good partners." Like, "Oh, well, you know, oh, I certainly should. My partner was able to follow that, or my partner was able to lead that on me, and that you look at that partner, and that partner is like 8-time winning world champion, uh, you know, and you're like, oh yeah, well yeah, that no wonder you felt like that dance was going incredibly well because your partner has a lot of experience in how the dance feels good, and so they're able to like help
Yeah.
really make things feel really good. uh
Yeah.
and so like that's a trap. I mentioned that not just to be like a little surly dance instructor, um uh asking for a little bit more hubris out there in the world. I say that because I think it's so easy for all of us to have those biases without realizing it. Those like great partner equals great. My dancing is based on how good my partner is, as opposed to trying to flip that around and being my dancing is based on how much fun I can have no matter what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's definitely something about the value system there. There's also something about self fulfilling prophecy there.
Yes.
And
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little
yeah,
bit more about that if you don't mind.
yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, you're so good. You're good. I was like, don't worry about it. I'm actually going to talk about it more. There's some like when we approach situations in life and we are um, excited about them and we're hopeful and we have great intentions for that situation. Oftentimes those things go well, and so I think the same goes on the dance floor. If you approach a person being like, "Ooh, yeah, this is gonna be great," you know, they can feel that energy, and then you start kind of
Hmm.
riding that energy, and people can feel when you want to dance with them, when you don't want to dance with them, or like when you feel like, "Oh, now it is my
Mm.
job to dance with you." But if you just like going back to this letting go of expectations and also um, deciding that whomever you're dancing with is going to be a good dance, like that will increase the opportunities, increase the chances of things being good. And I think that people who look like in our social dancing space that have like traditional Eurocentric beauty standards, like fit within those beauty standards, I think those people are more likely to experience somebody approaching them being like, this is going to be a great time. It's going to be a great time because I know how you move. They make that there's an assumption made there. I know how you move. You're going to respond well to this. You're going to look good doing this, and it's going to be great. And so people go into that, and then there's like this excitement that grows, and then confidence that grows, and all the good things that come from that self fulfilling prophecy. And then on the other side, if you approach somebody and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure how this is going to go, or like, this person is not a size or a body type that I'm used to dancing with, or this person is not a gender I'm used to dancing with, so I'm not sure how this is going to go. You may also have a terrible dance. And so there's this idea that, like, what you're putting in genuinely might you have a higher likelihood of getting that as the outcome. And I say higher likelihood and I don't say absolutely, because there are those times when you approach somebody and you're like, this is going to be awesome, and then you're dancing and you're like, something is not right. And there are other times when you approach somebody and you're like, I am not sure about this, and halfway through you're like, this is the most amazing thing ever. So there are those opportunities where life surprises you, but more often than not, when you approach a situation with hopeful and good intentions and excitement, that attitude can shape that situation. Yeah.
Absolutely. When you said self fulfilling prophecy, um, I thought you might start talking about it from a different direction, in that the self fulfilling prophecy of us teaching movement and moves
Uh-huh.
and philosophies that are based on two really often very specific body
There you
types.
go. Mm-hmm.
Um, and therefore, that's what you're learning in classes. And therefore, when you go and dance with someone who's not acting the exact same way that that teacher is acting, then you count it as a failure or as not ideal.
Ooh, I like that. I like that, Bobby. That was good. That was good. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. We forget that the thing that we see informs is this is the thing that we see informs our knowledge of the thing and then becomes the standard. And so, something that I've loved that we talk about in our classes, and I know you talk about on your own as well, is like thinking about the dancer Willie Desitoff and and how like if Willie never existed, it'd be really easy for the Balboa community to be like, that is not allowed. Whatever you're doing with your waggling of the legs, of your movement, that is not allowed. So yeah.
Yeah, for those listeners who might not know about Willie Desitoff was one of our great Balboa pioneers and elders in Bow Swing. And he, if you go and Google Willie Desitoff and watch some of his dancing on YouTube, you'll see he had a unique style. He liked to waggle his legs, waggle his knees. He liked to do kicks, and it's all incredibly cool. It's just incredibly cool. But in my head, there's kind of like a thing called like the Willie Desitoff paradox or whatever. There's probably a better name for it, but we'll just say it's the Willie Desitoff paradox, which is that in the modern scene, if we base our understanding on what's possible in Balboa only on what we have video footage of the original dancers doing, and if no one ever filmed Willie Desitoff, but someone in the modern scene went into a contest and started waggling their feet and kicking their legs and sliding around just like Willie Desitoff did, I'm pretty sure the reaction would be like, well, it's cool, but it's not Balboa. And yet this is the great, one of the great pioneers of Balboa. Like him and Maxi Dorf are like two are the two names of the original Balboa dancers that we use the most in classes, Hal Take being a close third. But out of those three folks, Willie Desitoff was a really crazy, weird outlier in the sense of the way he moved. And so we use that. I think that's a really important principle for us to think about today when we think about these dances and how individuality and how basically, like, if you imagine the dance's definition is like a functionality,
Mm-hmm.
a vague abstract functionality of, like Balboa is like out and in and rotating and orbiting and twisting, and those are your main ingredients. Then anything that you do with your body while doing those things arguably is the Willie Desitoff definition of bow swing. And so therefore that's a very empowering definition that we can do better to remember today. But I think to someone's point, that this goes for all body types.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because different body types lead to different mechanical movement, and we then sometimes put people on a scale of right and wrong based on their body size or their mechanics. And like, um, there's some incredible dancers out here who, so in the hip hop world, the Afro dance world, there's Amari Monster. She um, has toured with Beyonce and is like really well known. She's incredible, right? Um, and like not necessarily what you would like she mechanically can do all kinds of incredible things, but body type wise, she's tall and curvy. Like she's tall and thick and curvy. Um, and I think when we make a mistake and look at somebody and make a judgment about what they can or can't do, we're going against the Willie Desktop process principle and not even opening the door to see what amazing things could trickle out. Um, and so yeah, I think I want to speak specifically and pointedly about like um, body size, so and then also gender as well, gender diversity, and so um, it's important. We may realize that we make judgments about somebody's body, particularly when we think about body size. There, um, we need to think about like our perceptions of health. Um, and so someone might be like, oh, well, this person is clearly not healthy because they're a bigger person. Like they have a bigger tummy or thighs or whatever. Like we might be taught, like, oh, this person, health only looks a particular way. And that
Some folks out there just don't understand genetics.
exactly, exactly. So there's so many things. There's like the fact that health can happen at any size. There's also and then also like something else I think is really important to think about is like the not being healthy and disability can happen at any size. So I have a friend who is like who's quite thin and looks really athletic, but like has a really hard time dancing songs consecutively because she has a neurological condition called POTS. And so she can do like a song or a little bit of rigorous activity, but like her body has limitations. And so you might look at her and be like, oh, well, she's obviously healthy. Um, and she is, but like health is also not determined by our standards, right? So you might be like, oh, well, a person who's healthy can do ABC. So I want to question that idea of health. And then I also want to bring in the thoughts about ability. Like just because let's go into the realm of disability and let's go into the realm of sickness. Like we have chronically ill people who are in our scene. And I think that they should be able to participate in a way that makes sense for them. They should be able to dance and compete at a level that makes sense for them and perform and do all sorts of things that make sense for them. And so I think we also need to be rethinking our perceptions of ability as well as health. And a lot of that has to do with allowing people to determine what the pace at which they want to move, um, the way that they want to engage, and not making assumptions
Mm-hmm.
or determinations on behalf of other people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I
So,
love all those things. Oh man,
yeah, yeah,
some thoughts based on that. But if you're new to this podcast, this often happens. Just someone was like point A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm like, uh, additional thoughts on A, B, C, D, and E, and then it's really it's us trying to hold on to all of the things that we've talked about and all the points in our head. So,
yeah.
first thought: something that is so obvious in the original dancers is a um, a support of different body types. And I don't want to say this in a nostalgic or in an overly idealistic way. And as I talk about it more, I think it'll become clear why I can't argue that it's an idealistic way, but does seem to be very supportive and empowering. So for instance, we have Tiny Bunch. Tiny Bunch was a uh, very above average sized human being who danced, and he had his own Whitey's Lindy Hop team. He was he stuck out as a performer and entertainer. And I don't mean that as a pun. He literally was just such a great performer and entertainer that like he got top billing. He got his own Whitey's Lindy Hop troupe, and he was part of uh, the tradition. it became part of a tradition that they called comedy teams, where you would have your couples would be mismatched between body types. And so you might have a really, really tall
Mm.
person dancing with a really, really short person. You might have a larger than average person dancing with a smaller than average person. And that went both ways. We have photos of, there's a photo of a Whitey's Lindy Hop couple that I don't think was ever on film, and I don't know their names, but there's a photo of a larger than average woman dancing with a smaller than average man. And that was also the case with Gladys Crowder and Eddie Shorty Davis, who won the 1937 Harvest Moon Ball. She was a very tall woman dancing with a short man. And so, again, the reason why it's not idealistic is because, like, oh, well, so they have to be a comedy team if they're not the average sized person. So that those are aspects of it that are like problematic and deserving of attention. But on the whole, there there was that presence in the dance
Mhm.
floor back in the day. And if you were the world's most elite Lindy Hop team, you weren't necessarily the small person and the really like strong dude. Those weren't just the only two people who were in the Whitey's Lindy Hoppers. Furthermore, Whitey's Lindy Hoppers had famously Jimmy Valentine, who lost his
Yes.
leg who lost his leg. He was a young kid playing around trains like you did. I mean, back in the 1930s, if you're a young kid, of course you're going to play around some trains. There's some trains there, you're going to play around them. You're a latchkey kid from the 1930s. Of course, you're going to go out to the train yard, play around trains, and of course, eventually, one of you is going to get run over by, it's going to have your leg run over by a train, and you're going to have that amputated because this is what happens to 1930s latchkey kids. And so that is what happened to young Jimmy Valentine. It was actually probably in like 1910 or 1920. So even more of a latchkey, even more of a deadly scenario.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it was probably in his off hours from working at the factory. Uh, and so anyway, so young Jimmy Valentine loses his leg, but he loves to dance, and so he dances at the Savoy Ballroom, and he becomes a Whitey's Lindy Hopper, and he's famous for getting into jams, and he could spin on the cane, and so the other thing he could do is he would throw away his cane and start doing swing outs on the one leg, and
Mhm.
in the 1970s, another leg amputee dancer whose name we've not been able to fully get yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be easy to get because I think some of the dancers still alive know who this person was. But in the Mamalu Parks dancers, they had a guy who would come out and do the same thing sometimes, where he would just dance around on one leg, throw his cane away, social dance, that kind of stuff. So again, we do have a history of back in the day them being like yes, 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 and all of this kind of made me think about. I think when modern judges
Mm.
judge contests, and this is a whole nother episode that we will do. So this is a whole nother episode. But when modern judges judge contests, one of the factors that plays a large role in what they're doing is a vague sense of difficulty, right?
Mm.
So like
Mhm.
these dancers, all things being equal, if every single competitor was equal in their ability, in their musicality, in everything, the dancers who were doing stuff that was more difficult would probably take the prize.
Mhm.
Now, the thing that's problematic about that in several different ways is, first off, is if I'm watching one couple do something really difficult and I'm watching another couple groove their asses off and enjoy the fuck out of that song and each
Mhm.
other's movement, which one is actually more better? Like, what is
Yeah.
actually more this like spirit of this dance form?
Yeah. Yeah.
Difficulty alone does not equal better dancing in the spirit of
Yeah.
of Lindy Hop and Balboa and all this stuff.
Yeah. 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 I call certain competitions "Can I get a triple step?" because there because it is just it's basically it's acrobatics and gymnastics with like a couple steps in between, and that like to your point about the different types of competitions that they had back in the day, I think that there is a place for all of these things. Like, I think there's a place for acrobatics and like, speaking of Bianca and Nils, like, how close can you like get your face to the floor and like get to the emergency room without actually getting to the emergency room, right? Like, like, just like how like incredible feats of strength and anti-gravity, like what can we, yeah. And so there's something about exploring that, there's something about exploring power and performance, and I think there's absolutely a place for that. But also, to your point, like sitting in the spirit of this dance, I was talking to D Locke the other day, and she made a comment that has struck me, and it's something that we see all the time with people who did these dances in their youth and then come back to them. They almost like say that what we're doing is different from what they did. They'll be like, "Oh, I really like that dance you're doing," and you're like, "But I watched you a million times." Like, I watched you to do the dance that I'm doing. It's the same dance. but there's something about the spirit of that dance that is different when we are working to achieve mastery over it versus like being in the groove and experiencing like the spiritual elements of that dance. So there's also that place. And then and to your point about like, thank you so much. The reason why I like basically jumped out of my seat when you brought up Jimmy Valentine is that I was talking to someone who's been in the scene for a couple years now, but is still, they would probably say that they're a newer dancer relatively, right? Like they're a post pandemic dancer. Or not saying that the pandemic is over, but you get what I'm saying. They started after the pandemic started. Got it? Yeah. Cool. Um, and they didn't know about Jimmy Valentine. And I was talking to them because we're talking about chronic health issues and so on. And I was like, dude, there was like, look, watch this video of Sylvia Sykes dancing with Jimmy Valentine. And they were like, oh my word, like what? A person with one leg was dancing? Like, yes, yes. Like people of all kinds of ability levels, like people who of all kinds of shapes and sizes originated these dances and have persisted in these dances. And then to your point about the comp floor, I think what you said about people's perception in terms of your definition of self fulfilling prophecy happens in competitions where it's the cycle is you have instructors that look a particular way, you have people who come to class, and you might have diverse body sizes in the earlier and the beginner levels. But by the time you get to intermediate and advanced, those body types look more like the judges. And then when they are on the competition floor, you might have body diversity, but the people who advance to finals and then win look like those judges. And so it's like this cycle that continues where then people watching them see those people rewarded, and they're like, oh well, maybe I'm not welcome in this space because I don't look like that, I don't move like that. I don't mind taking classes, but I know that I will be able to like move forward in my classes, but I'll never move forward in competition because of XYZ things. So, yeah. And like you said, that's a whole other episode that we'll get into later. Um, yeah. I did want to bring back the issue of gender, um, because people of different genders dancing together, people of the same gender dancing together, um, members of the LGBTQIA plus community have been a crucial part of the swing scene since the beginning as well. And like,
Mm-hmm.
it's really, and even if you're not a member of the LGBTQ plus community, dancing with somebody of your same gender does not put you in that category. And I think sometimes I've seen people be afraid of dancing with the same gender because they're like, "What is that saying?" And it's, but what that is saying is you're
Mm.
being historically accurate. That's what that's saying. And then at the same time, you might be making other people feel more comfortable. Oops. And so I think it's really important for us to realize also that our behavior in certain ways can make people be more safe, particularly those who are more vulnerable amongst us. So
Mm.
yeah.
By the way, some of my favorite dances of the night are the over the Sean Vitale. Shout out to Sean Vitale, Vito here in New York. Uh, Great friend, great dancer, and it's become like one of our favorite dance traditions. I'll speak for myself. One of my favorite dance traditions is that we'll have a few dances together most nights when we're out dancing at the same time, and it's just so fun to like dance with a friend, and like even though we're both like not amazing primary followers. I mean, we're not primary followers. We're part time follow. We are small time following. Um, but it's so fun to like just kind of see what we can get each other to do, and to like just really enjoy the experience with each other. And yeah, it's just a blast. It's something
Yeah.
that I think that uh, there are many reasons why we should break down the walls in our brains. One of the reasons why I think people should, if they haven't already, start going out there and trying at least a little bit of leading and a little bit of following. Try a little bit of the other role at least. Is it can just be really, you can learn so much about the roles, and you can, you know, beforehand I only danced with half of the people in the room, and so in a weird way I was only
Mm.
experiencing half of the community. Whereas now
Mm.
that I can follow and lead well enough to like social dance, um,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm even more connected to the community around me in ways I didn't
Yeah.
realize were possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 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 Being on both sides is really, it's a great skill set to have. And like you said, it opens your doors. You can dance with anybody. And
And it gets you more
yeah.
comfortable physically with other people, right? Like if the first, like
Yeah.
I remember when we taught, when we came back from the pandemic in classes, local classes in New York City, I was going to be teaching alone, which I hadn't done a whole lot of, and we had such a like the smattering, like the smattering of leads versus follow, like the lead versus follow dynamic in class was different every single week, and so it was like, oh well, now's a chance to do some ELF stuff. ELEF, everyone leads, everyone follows. By the way, that's a term commonly used for classes where the teacher, where everyone does both roles. As Randy Maestretti and Kara Britt from San Francisco, Balboa instructors were the first people I know to use that term. I think they created that term specifically. They were probably not the first people to teach that way, but just a little shout out to them. So we were going to do the classes ELF style. Now in New York, the Balboa dancers who show up to your classes are all body types, all age ranges, and so in those first few classes, like first off, shout out to them. They came to those classes. Second of all, this you would see this older gentleman who the second they were like, okay, let's switch roles, they would have this look of fear in their
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then like 5 minutes later, they were having a blast and probably being pretty uncomfortable for their partners because they were just in it so much and so hard. Um, but that was one of those like rarely in our lives do you get to see someone's like world change before your eyes in like 3 seconds just because you asked them to do something that they were a little bit hesitant to do beforehand, and then like 3 seconds later they were totally comfortable and happy about it. And that that is not just touching another human being. Like maybe you're a little hesitant to dance with that person who you can't tell, what gender they prefer to be, or something like there's something about them that you haven't experienced before, and now you're going to touch that human being, and 3 seconds later you've touched that human being, you've moved around with them on the dance floor, you've shared physics and a song and moments together, and now all of a sudden you're a lot more comfortable with that human being interaction in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And um, speaking of talking about like, uh, speaking plainly about being vulnerable, oftentimes our non binary friends, our trans friends, have negative experiences with folks that may frequent a swing dance space. And so by being open to dancing with all kinds of people, that makes life just a little bit safer, and I think it's our social dancing space should be a place where we get to fully be who we are and so that we can engage in our creativity, and it's an opportunity to create something with another human being. Like, that's the reason why dancing is so amazing. You have a finite amount of time to have an infinite amount of fun, right? And so it is saddening to me to see over and again, people from different vulnerable communities show up to dance floors and then be ignored because people
Mm.
don't know what to do with them. Like, um, and so that can be, and so I say that as like somebody whose mom is perpetually on them, me, about being a particular body size, right? So I already have a lot of like junk about like the size of my body, right? And so if somebody is like different from the assumed norm in any way, then they already have a lot of messaging aimed at them about being different or wrong, or just there's more stuff that is directed towards them. And so why not like help things out a little bit and help our world, a world that sometimes feels like it's on fire. Like, why not take a vacation from that fire and be a kind human being and engage in safe touch. That's something else that I love about dancing, is that it is a codified and safe way to engage in touch, which all humans need. It is a human need. So let's engage in safe human interaction and demonstrate love and kindness, um, and not ignore folks. you know yeah.